Okay, welcome. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight for GCISD's presentation of the Aspire External Review. I'm Kimberly Phoenix, and I'm honored to be the current president of GC Sage. And we're very excited to see that we're having a large turnout for this event this evening, and as we continue to witness such a high level of interest in the Aspire program. We did take note that quite a few of you who are logging in tonight are not currently members of Sage for this year, so I can't miss an opportunity for a membership plug. So everyone knows that we're in the midst of a complicated year for many membership organizations and, gosh, just for the world in general. And I'm just going to lay it out there and say that our membership numbers are down just a little bit this year. And due to the pandemic, we're limited on some of our options for programming and definitely for our typical socials and fundraisers and things that we do. So in order to continue doing the amazing work that we do on behalf of our GT community, we are dependent on membership dollars. So if you haven't renewed your membership this year, or you're new to our organization, please just know that it's not too late, and our membership starts at $20. So if you would like to renew or join, please go to our website at gc-sage.org for more information on how to sign up. It's a super easy process. And for those of you who might be wondering what we could possibly be spending funds on this year, then that's going to be a great transition to the second point that I'd like to make this evening, which is teacher appreciation. The Sage Board has made a commitment this year to continually finding new ways to thank our amazing educators for all that they've done and that they continue to do for advanced academics programs. Y'all, we have almost 20 educators who are logging in this evening to hear this presentation. And that's after an incredibly long day of teaching and prepping and adminning and disinfecting and, you know, trying to keep kids dry in the pickup and drop off lines. So just a huge shout out and a thank you to each of you and to your colleagues who make the magic happen every single day for us. And I hope all of our parents logging in will also join us in continuing to give grace and show our appreciation to our teachers. So a couple of quick last notes, and then I'm going to hand it off to Mrs. Julie Leslie, who is GCISD's Director of Advanced Academics. So first, you have been asked to keep your audio off if you're not one of the speakers. So please do that. If for some reason you accidentally get unmuted, remute yourself. And if we run into any bandwidth problems, we may ask you to turn your cameras off to allow for better connectivity for the panelists. But so far, I think we're doing pretty good there. This is a virtual meeting that is being recorded, and it will be posted on the Sage website and on our social media channels. As an audience, you can use the chat function to ask a topical question or to let us know of any technology problems. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention, I know we had a few of you who submitted questions for the speakers at the time that you registered for this event. And I just wanted to let you know that we've incorporated some of those into the presentation this evening. And a couple of the questions were a bit more personal or didn't really apply to the focus of tonight's presentation. So I would encourage you to submit questions directly to Mrs. Leslie and her team. And I know they'd be more than happy to chat with you regarding a specific situation, and so that they can provide you more customized guidance in regards to questions like, I know we had a question where someone wanted to know what's the difference between an Aspire and a regular AP class. And that's not really the content for tonight, but they would love to chat with you about that if you have any questions. And they can give you some more examples in regards to that. Or things like someone asked a question of, you know, if you qualified for the Aspire program, you know, how do you decide whether to stay at GT Lead or move over to Aspire? So that's another one that I know the Advanced Academics team and also the leadership of Sage would be happy to chat with you about our experiences. So please, you can always email me at president@gc-sage.org. Or any of the board members are all available on our website with their email addresses. And again, anyone in the Advanced Academics department would love to help you with that information. And lastly, I know one other quick thing, someone had asked about what the upcoming test dates are for GT and Aspire. And I don't know that Mrs. Leslie's planning to include that this evening, but just know that's always on the website. So always go to the GCISD website and go to the Advanced Academics page. And whenever there's upcoming dates and information, that is posted there. So you'll be able to find it. And my last thing to say is if you have not voted yet, please do so. You have Early voting available until Friday. And if you are looking for information about our school board candidates, and all of them are listed on our voter guide on our stage website. So please go check that out if you haven't voted yet, or please do so next Tuesday, because that's super important to all of us in advanced academics. And that's it for me. So Julie, it is all yours.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good evening to everybody tuning in this evening. Before I introduce Dr. Todd Kettler, I too would like to thank the teachers who are listening. You are the lifeblood of Aspire Academy, and we are so grateful for the way that you have just had to retool and rethink and redo so many things for this year, but also just the level of passion and commitment that you bring to the classroom every day and that you were bringing before this challenging year. And so if you are listening, please know how very much you are loved and respected, admired, and appreciated for everything that you do for our kids. We also have on the line, I think, our Aspire principals who are spending time with us after a busy day of serving students and parents on their campuses, as well as several members of central office leadership who are clearly showing that Aspire Academy is important, giving their time to listen to this presentation tonight. So thank you also to the parents and everybody who is tuning in this evening. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Todd Kettler of Baylor University, who is going to be doing the lion's share of presenting this evening. We are so fortunate that Dr. Kettler lives in this area. Kimberly, if you'll, yes, advance the screen. He comes to us with so many qualifications to having done this audit for us. He has published numerous articles in academic journals and published a number of books, all related to gifted education. He teaches gifted classes at Baylor. He has traveled to a number of states nationwide conducting similar audits as he did for us and giving his opinion on gifted programming. And then in addition to that, he has served at both the Texas state level and the national level on many things related to gifted education. Perhaps one of my favorite things about my colleague, Todd, my colleague and friend, is that he spent, after he was a teacher, he was 12 years as the director of advanced academics in several districts in this area. And now he's sitting in this chair, I can tell you that just having spent so much time in that position just uncovers all of the nuances that are connected to building and providing outstanding gifted programming in districts. And that is the lens and the level of expertise, all of those things, the expertise that Dr. Kettler brings to the table in any of his endeavors, and certainly the expertise that he brought to the audit that he conducted for us, the comprehensive audit that he conducted for us. As you may recall, he started last August, and it took him all semester for this evaluation of Aspire Academy. What you are going to hear this evening, he presented to our Board of Trustees last January. This presentation was scheduled to be presented to our parents in March or April, and of course that had to be canceled. And so we are excited that Dr. Kettler was willing and available to come back this evening so that you all could hear straight from him what he found. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Schnautz. When I visited with him, not this past summer, but the one before, about this audit, I was so relieved and thrilled. He was still somewhat my new boss then, and I was so relieved and thrilled that he said absolutely on the green light in saying to Dr. Kettler, listen, do a very comprehensive audit of Aspire. And I was able to say to Dr. Kettler, certainly produce the celebrations and the strengths of our program so that we can share those and trumpet those, but don't be sensitive about telling us where we need to improve, because we can't grow if we can't improve. And so I was so thrilled that Dr. Schnautz and Dr. Ryan were so supportive of that endeavor, and that both of those things you're going to hear tonight, the strengths as well as the improvement areas. Last, I would say that Dr. Kettler is going to spend just a couple of minutes sharing with you how he gathered data for this audit. As he begins to share with you his findings, I think it's important for you to have the context related to how he gathered the data that led him to the various findings that he's going to be sharing with us tonight. And so with that, it's my pleasure to introduce to you my friend and colleague, Dr. Todd Kettler of Baylor University.
Thank you, Julie. This is my first time to talk. Is my sound okay, Kimberly? I can see you. Is it okay?
It is.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Well, I'm gonna apologize in advance. Similar to what Julie said, I also have my furry friends, my 4 dogs running around my feet every now and then. My wife is in the other room teaching tonight, and right before she started class and I came in here, I said, "Isn't this fascinating?" Because she's teaching a class in program evaluation tonight, which is one of her specialties. She teaches that at Baylor University as well. And I said, and I'm going to be in the other room talking about program evaluation tonight. I said, what does that say? And she said, well, we're a real barrel of laughs, aren't we? And yeah, I guess maybe that says something about what we think is fun around here. But I'm happy to be here. If my dogs go a little crazy, I'll try to calm them down if it happens. But they're pretty accustomed to this. We've been teaching online and having quite a bit of meetings from our home since March. I want to start a little bit, like Julie said, just briefly hit this data collection because while I find this really fascinating, it is a little bit drier than some of the other topics. We did use document review, surveys, focus groups, and campus visits. And I think both Cheryl and Julie can attest that we had a lot of phone calls along the way as well, because they were incredibly open. And when I say that, there were times when I would have questions, like I've come across something I don't understand, and I could call them and get almost immediate responses every time. So when you're doing program evaluation, the ability to get that kind of clarifying information on the spot is super helpful. So I just want to say thank you for that. Yeah, let's go on to the next slide there, Kimberly. Some of the document review started in early August, and it started with me reviewing initially the program description and history. I wanted to know, like, how long's the program been around? Where did it come from? Why was it created? What were the foundations of Aspire? So I dug in there to start with. Then I looked very closely at the mission statement, the stated goals, which I want to first say, I've worked with gifted education for a long time and done a number of program evaluations. Just the fact that you have goals written down separates Aspire from many other programs. So there were goals and there are student outcomes that are actually created and written to give the program direction. And I appreciate that. It certainly helps with an evaluation because when we know what we're trying to achieve, it makes it much easier to make judgments about whether we are or are not, or to what degree we're achieving those goals. I also looked at curriculum documents and de-identified student achievement data, which was quite helpful as well. I'm going to talk about that specifically here in a moment. In the survey category, the surveys were online and anonymous, so no one provided any identifying information. The 3 groups we surveyed, I wrote the survey, but we wrote it collaboratively, honestly, because I got a lot of feedback from Julie and the administration as we developed the items, because we wanted to make sure the items were capturing what we wanted. The parents, teachers, and students were the primary audiences, and you can see we got 566 responses, which is a tremendous response rate. Those included both online, open-ended and selected response items. So the selected response items were typically Likert scale items, and then the open-ended responses allowed people to make additional comments and answer specific questions with textual responses. I used a focus group protocol. We had 15 total focus groups. You can see the numbers and breakdown there. The focus groups are helpful because we can get a little bit of group discussion so people can build off of what other people are saying and give us a little more comprehensive picture of some of the things that are going on. In addition to those surveys and focus groups, multiple meetings and conference calls with Julie and Cheryl. In fact, Cheryl, I don't think anybody appreciates that Cheryl mostly drove me around the district because I didn't always know where the campuses were. And rather than taking a chance that I would get lost, I think there was something about my personality that indicated that was a possibility. So Cheryl was essentially my driver. And many of the questions were answered as we drove from place to place. And so I don't think Cheryl gets enough credit for how many questions she had to answer as we drove around town from campus to campus. I did visit every campus and every Aspire classroom, and I think that was a critical component of my ability to make some of the assessments of what I saw. I'm gonna talk about 9 specific strength areas. This is just the list, and I'm gonna go through each of the 9 one at a time. But before I launch into the 9, I want to explain a process we use with data collection and program evaluation, which is common to other types of research, which is building more credibility through triangulation. When I say triangulation, one of the things I would do is I would ask questions on the survey, and then I would follow up with similar questions on the focus groups, and then I would use similar questions when I ask similar questions when I talk to Julie and Cheryl. And so when you look at feedback from the administration, feedback from the focus groups, feedback from the surveys, I get information from multiple sources. So when I say I believe this is accurately what's going on, this accurately reflects what's going on, it's because I saw the evidence of it from multiple sources. I would be hesitant to hear something from one source and say, I believe this is going on. So whatever I'm claiming here as strengths and some areas of improvement, know that those came from multiple sources of data before I drew those conclusions. So Kimberly, if you'd go ahead and advance to the first slide there on student achievement. This is a remarkable strength, and one of the maybe it's not surprising to you, and it was a little bit surprising to me because it's so consistently awesome. But some of the data I looked at was College Board data, which included the PSAT 8-9 and PSAT scores. We looked a little bit at AP scores, but that's such a small sample because the oldest group of students were only in 10th grade. So we don't make a big deal about those because with small samples, we don't like to reveal too much achievement data. But I want you to see the score range there. 100% of the students by middle school had achieved College Board's benchmarks for college readiness, 100%. And I could say that all day, and you should smile every time I say that because that's impressive. There are a lot of school districts that wish they could have 75% by the time they finish high school, or maybe even 50% by the time students finish high school. And to say that Aspire has 100% of its students achieve and exceed the College Board's college readiness benchmarks by the end of middle school is quite impressive. And that was looking over multiple cohorts of students. Also, the percentile ranks for those PSAT and PSAT 8-9 scores ranged from 91st to 98th percentile over that 3-year period. And just to make sure everybody's on board with what we mean by percentile, a convenient way to translate this term percentile would mean a score of the 95th percentile would mean that score is at or above 95% of all the other students who took that exam or that assessment. So when we say the range was between 91st and 98th percentile, you can see that compared to students all across the United States, the Aspire students are performing in the top 10% and some in the top 2, 3, or 4% of those national norms. The STAR scores were high across the board in reading and math in particular, and they increased across grade levels. And why that mattered to me is, first of all, there's a ceiling effect on STAR, because when we're talking about incredibly talented students, they certainly score at the top performance band on STAR, so it's hard to see growth even if it's happening. But there is some increase gradually over those grade levels, which tells me that there's not a stagnation in the basic state curriculum, because I know we're teaching a differentiated curriculum, and you see the differentiated results show up in things like the College Board assessments. But when you see the STAR scores that are already high and continue to increase, that also tells me that we're covering the state curriculum quite adequately for those students to perform at that level. We use the Ames Web achievement test data. That's a test the district gives. You can see that math and reading achievement are in the 96th and 97th percentile. So like I would challenge you guys, like, how do you even write an improvement goal when you're already performing at the 96th and 97th percentile? So you're at this position where you've got to redefine how we measure growth in math and reading achievement, because even the best tests that we have or can give are not in a position to capture much growth, because the students are already performing at the top end or near the ceiling of those assessments. So we can advance, Kimberly. Thank you. Another thing I want to point out, and this came up across several of the data collection points, the Aspire students are grouped for their academic work, meaning that they are working in groups with other Aspire students. In some cases, they're cross-grade grouped, which is also beneficial. But one of the things that was important to me is to find out what people thought about these groupings. And it was very consistent across all forms of data, from the online surveys to the focus groups with students, parents, and teachers, that grouping was appreciated and valuable to the program and the program outcomes. One of the theories of grouping is grouping facilitates, you can see this in some of my bullet points here, grouping facilitates differentiated instruction delivery, and it also facilitates the use of acceleration techniques. While we know those are best practices and highly recommended in gifted education, what you'll find is in places where we don't have academic groupings, it is more difficult to implement both differentiated instruction and acceleration. So what you find is the grouping is not the goal. The grouping is this infrastructure that allows us to differentiate the instruction through both enrichment and acceleration, so that achievement is the goal. And what I look at is, are all three of those components in place: the grouping, the enrichment, and the acceleration? And I found tremendous evidence that all three of those elements were present. One of the things we also noticed about the grouping is the Aspire students from elementary all the way through high school, in many cases, described their fellow Aspire students as their core friend group. In some cases, these were their best friends, but not in all cases. But they did say, this is my core friend group. And that's not unusual necessarily for high-achieving students, gifted students, to find that other students who have similar academic interest and goal orientations oftentimes are their friends, because they have that in common. One of the other things I also thought was quite important is that the students described the Aspire environment as an environment that was very accepting of their differences, because while everybody may have a high level of academic potential, everybody also brings differences to that learning environment. And the students overwhelmingly described Aspire as a very accepting culture. One of the questions I had when I was beginning the evaluation is, when you set up a program to provide exceptional education to some of the most talented students, highly gifted students, a good question is, well, how do you find the teachers that are ready for that? Because it's not necessarily common for teachers to go through teacher education and be well prepared to work with gifted students in general, much less gifted students who are even on the high end of this range of gifted student. And one of the things I was curious about is, well, who are these teachers? And one of the things I found, I found several things regarding our teachers. First of all, they were very knowledgeable and skilled. And I asked them lots of questions just to see. I mean, I was trying to get a sense of, like, what did they know about gifted kids? What do they know about gifted education? And I can tell you they're very knowledgeable. One of the things that I also heard from the student groups is the students generally praise their teachers. And I've worked with gifted kids a long time, and I'm going to tell you that's not always the case. While you may think students always love their teacher, right? But not always with gifted kids. Sometimes it's a chess match to find out if this teacher is going to satisfy some of my intellectual curiosities and sustain my interest. So the students talked very highly of the teachers. I thought that teachers also demonstrated advanced content knowledge in their areas. And I observed that not only in my focus group meetings with the teachers, but also when I went from classroom to classroom. I walk around and I look at the instructional strategies the teachers were using, look at the resources they had in those classrooms. I wanted to know what kind of content was being taught and delivered to the students. And I saw that in the curriculum documents that I was able to observe, but I also saw it when I was in those classrooms. So I would characterize the teachers as having this advanced content knowledge, which is critical to work with highly gifted students. One of the other things I noticed is there were some concerns that occasionally maybe there's a teacher in the program that is, I would say, less of a good fit in terms of what the program expectations are, content expertise, those sort of things. And one of some of the data I found is that the leadership was very responsive to working with the campus to find the right teachers in all cases. So I think that's important. And one of the things I noticed is it was a shared decision making between the administration and district administration and campus administration to try to identify the best teachers for those positions. This is something that should make parents happy as well. I talked to students from elementary, middle school, and high school, and I found them generally happy. Right. And I'm a parent, right? I send my kids to school every day. And yes, I want them to come home smarter than I sent them out that morning. But more importantly, I want them to come home happy at the end of the day. So that school was a place that enriched their lives and expectations beyond just the academics. I generally found that among the Aspire students. I even had one student that was a little teary-eyed saying that their family had moved to the Grapevine-Colleyville school district specifically for her to attend the Aspire Academy. And she described it as a life-changing experience. Her life prior to being able to attend Aspire had been a less positive schooling experience, I would say. But to see students with tears in their eyes, I was overwhelmed a little bit, in all honesty, that students would speak that way about a program, that it was life-changing in some ways, and it was not limited to that one student. I even had parents say in the parent focus groups that their kids like school more than ever. And the students described a difference between their Aspire classes and their non-Aspire classes. I don't think regular is the right word. I just didn't know what else to put there. So we'll just call them general ed classes. It's probably a better term. But the students said there's a vast difference. There's a vast difference in the curriculum that's being delivered. And maybe there's a difference because of what I would describe as some friendly competition that goes on between the students and their peers in some of those rooms. I think that probably also contributed to that feeling of this is engaging, this is rigorous, and it feels a little different than my general education classes. The students also said, I pointed this out a few times to Julie and Cheryl, but and parents should know this too, that the students frequently described Aspire as, I said, well, is this pretty challenging? I mean, some of these kids are working like 3 grade levels above what their actual grade level is. And I'd say, well, I ask a survey question and then I ask it in focus groups and then even in the open-ended responses. And I got it in all 3 places. The students said, yeah, but it could probably even be more challenging. I thought, man, okay, I'll pass that on. I said, are you sure you want me to pass that on? And they said, yeah, pass that on. I think it could even be a little bit more challenging. So we've talked about that, and I'm sure there's some ways that you're already working on it, even in the middle of a pandemic, to see if we can continue to just push the kids a little bit in the rigors of that curriculum. So I'm going to talk about math in particular. I'm not going to talk about every subject, but I'm going to point out math because my data suggested that math was regarded across the board from elementary through high school as probably the strongest subject area in the program. Are there pockets that I would say they're rivals to that? Absolutely there are. But consistently, I heard really positive feedback about math. And I'll give you for instance, ask questions about each of the 4 core content areas on the selected response survey to see how students responded to is the mathematic curriculum challenging them? And then I asked parents the same question. And I didn't ask it on the survey to teachers, but I talked about it in the focus groups as I met with teachers. And what I heard from all of the sources of data is that the students felt more challenged or more appropriately challenged in mathematics than they did in science, language arts, and social studies. And it's not a huge difference, but it was enough of a difference for me to think, oh. And I think there are a couple of evidences of why that's probably the case. One is the mathematical acceleration. You have tremendous systems for acceleration. For instance, when I was in the middle school, I'd talk to some of these kids, and as I was visiting the middle school, and I came across kids that were taking calculus in middle school. I came across kids that are in algebra 2. A lot of the kids, or most of the kids, were taking at least geometry, which is 2 years ahead of the typical state recommended curriculum. So you definitely have widespread use of acceleration. And then when I look more specifically at the elementary school, I found this elementary math component very compelling in the sense of how the students would be regrouped to work with kids who are on their level more so than of their same age. And I thought that was an impressive technique that I saw going on at the middle school. I will say if there's one drawback about the math program that I heard a little bit about, there was some concern that once students got into the self-paced math, that was maybe not quite as efficiently or effectively implemented. While they thought it was better than continuing to work on something maybe they already know, I think they felt like they would like a little bit of support in the self-paced aspect of it. But when I say, I'm not going to say that's a weakness. I'm just going to say if there's an area to focus some improvement. Developing math skills effectively was the most agreed upon area of the core curriculum. And I also want to point out, you can go ahead and switch the slides, Kimberly, but I'd also point out that the math achievement also reflects that evidence of how the math program works. And in my hunch is students are achieving higher in math than even the tests that they take can capture, because they're performing at the 96th to 98th percentile on some, like on the College Board assessments. So it's possible that there's they're having a ceiling effect because they're even performing at the high end of that test. Two of the strengths that I'm going to highlight on the same slide are critical thinking and some aspects of the learning environment in general. The students described frequently that one of the things they liked about Aspire is that the teachers challenged them to think critically, much more so than they had in their pre-Aspire courses or in their general education courses that they're also taking. The parents saw critical thinking at home, and they suggested that when they saw their kids demonstrating critical thinking at home, they attributed that to some of the effects of the program. One of the things I also heard from our teacher groups is they felt that building critical thinking specifically into the curriculum was a focus from the administration and an expectation. So it is not surprising to me that this was something that seemed to stand out as a strength from both the students, the teachers, and the parents' perspective. I want to go back to the learning environment, because learning environments can be tricky, especially when we have grouped classes of all students who are in this highly gifted category. Partly because there's this psychological phenomenon that I didn't talk a lot about in the written report, but I think I talked about informally a little bit with probably what Cheryl and I talked about driving around town, is there's this concept of the big fish, little pond effect. And sometimes when you're a highly gifted kid, what you generally are is very confident in your academic capacities, because wherever you are in school, you might, whether you intend to or not, you're inadvertently making comparisons of how you see yourself performing or mastering that content compared to those around you. But suddenly you put everybody you take everybody from a common sort of intellectual background and put them in one classroom. And no longer do you have any big fish, right? Suddenly that pond seems much vaster and the competition is stronger. So one of the things that I went into this sort of wondering about is, did students feel like they had less self-efficacy or lower academic self-concepts because of that grouping? And I didn't see evidence of that at all. I felt that the students described the program as quite accepting, and they were supportive of each other. even as they got into high school, because if you think about high school, when you start competing for top 10% and stuff like that, sometimes the hey, we're all in this together spirit starts to dissipate. But I even saw that was maintained, quite, probably more than it would even be in some typical schools within in this Aspire Academy. So I think that was something you should hail as a strength of the program. The parents generally felt like the Aspire provided positive and supportive learning environments as well. One of the questions I ask at the campus level is, what do you think about the leadership over there? How are they helping you support this program at the campus level? Teachers, how do they help you in terms of materials and resources you need, training you need, those sorts of things? And one of the, can we go back? Thank you. That one of the things that was consistent is teachers said they were very supported by the leadership, and the teachers said they were supported by the leadership at both the campus and the district level. And I think that's important to point out, because in most cases as a teacher, your first line of support is your district, your campus administrator prior to your district administration. But they felt supported at both levels. And I also asked parents about it, and parents felt quite confident in the current leadership team. I think there was a lot of appreciation for adding the Aspire Liaison position, feeling that strengthened the unity across the program, so that we could try to build consistency from campus to campus within the Aspire program. And I think there was also a sense of tremendous knowledge about gifted education and gifted students. At least that was my perception working with the leadership, and the teachers and parents also expressed similar sentiments. So I think that's a definite strength of the program. So that's, I summarized 9 strengths that I particularly highlighted. I'm not going to say those are necessarily all the strengths. I know the evaluation report that I included was even more thorough, looking at various aspects. These are the ones that I thought stood out very broadly, data triangulated to support each of these 9 areas. So now a good question is, well, how do we make it better, right? We don't get a program evaluation just so somebody can pat us on the back. We want to ask the question of, how do we get even better? And I think I want to applaud you guys for being willing to ask that question and being willing to listen to some of my suggestions. So Kimberly, let's look at what my ideas were here. The first thing I'm going to suggest as an improvement area is this word written. Written. One of the things I found is that curriculum was in the head of many of the teachers. Curriculum was on their hard drives at home because they would plan at home. Curriculum was in notebooks where they had scratched out some of their ideas. What I would like to suggest is try to capture that curriculum in a written, structured format, partly because of just longevity and continuity, because you never know when you're going to have teachers leave for various reasons or retire. And it's nice to think that we have captured that written curriculum in a way where we can sustain it and continue to implement it, and it's not dependent upon the presence of that teacher, because teachers get opportunities to move into other areas. And I would say a strength and longevity of the program is to put a little more focus on the written aspect of the curriculum. But in addition to written, I'd like to see a little more vertical alignment. In that alignment, I would say focus discipline by discipline and ask, because one of the things I would see is we might accelerate in some grade levels, but then we would be more enrichment focused at others. And it seems like we needed to build in a little more expansion of the acceleration, so that we have a consistent use of acceleration across grade levels. But vertical alignment of some of the specific concepts and techniques would also be helpful. The second item I wanted to focus on as a possible improvement area is to increase the STEM focus in the curriculum. I don't want to say there's no STEM focus. There is a STEM focus, But I consistently heard from parents that they felt like that could be a little bit stronger. And even students. I'll never forget the day I sat there talking to a table full of elementary students. And they would just look at me like like they were having a conversation with one of their friends and say, you know what, I wish we could do more science experiments. I said, well, what do you mean by that? Give me some specifics. And they said, you know, where we have to develop some hypotheses and test those hypotheses. Like, I think that'd be fun. And I thought, man, you're right. That would be fun. That is awesome that you want that as your as part of your elementary school experience. So I would just say, not only building in like the accelerated science. That was something that came up, is how can we match the accelerated science with the accelerated math at the elementary level, and so that it more aligns, because science is quite accelerated in middle school, but there's less acceleration of the science leading up to that point. So when I talked to the students, they said one of the biggest leaps you have to make in the curriculum is from 5th grade science to 6th grade science. So I think if we try to build a little more of the accelerated science at the end of the elementary continuum, that would be helpful. The career explorations and internships and mentorships was mentioned several times, particularly by parents of middle school and high school students. It's this idea that as you're mastering the curriculum, one of the things that we could also overlay on that is possible career exploration. One of the challenges that really talented kids sometimes face is, and I think most of us would say, how's that a challenge? But it's a challenge because if you've got a lot of ability, you sometimes look at the world and think, I could do anything. I could be a doctor, a lawyer, a professor. I could probably be an astronaut if I chose that. So when you've got that kind of potential, one of the things that you might need help with is understanding how career fields work. Even what we find in the research with gifted kids is they'll graduate high school and have very high levels of achievement, but not know that much about various career fields. So for instance, there were a few studies a handful of years ago where they would ask students to list as many jobs as they could think of. And you would be astonished at how short most of those lists were. Students have very narrow limited of jobs that are possible. So there was this sense that could we build career exploration into the curriculum? And it was also specifically mentioned in the STEM areas. Also at high school, the interest in internships and mentorships was widely talked about, so that students might have authentic experiences learning about their subject areas and and that would go hand in hand with the career exploration as well. And I know Julie and I have been talking about internship and mentorship programs probably for 15 years. And she may not tell you all this, but she's quite an expert at that. So I think that's another area that you could continue to expand. I'll quickly run through these other three because there are two other bigger areas. The teachers said they wanted more training in specialized instruction and curriculum development, whereas they felt like they had a lot of training in understanding the needs of highly gifted students, but they wanted to see a shift toward more training on, okay, now that we understand where the students are coming from, what kind of pedagogy are we expected to use? Prepare me how to use that pedagogy within my subject area, and also prepare. I think they wanted to be better prepared to implement the type of curriculum, which we've talked about as in some cases we're using parallel curriculum model. In other cases, there might be other models, but the teachers wanted more training in that. So just a slight shift in focus in some of the teacher training. One of the things I gathered in the evaluation is leadership skills. Developing leadership skills is mentioned as a specific Aspire goal, but I found little instruction or curriculum that actually was devoted to that. And so I asked questions about it here and there in focus groups a little bit, in the open-ended surveys. And most people thought, well, it is a great idea. We'd like to do it, but there's just not a concrete moment or element of the curriculum that contributes to that. So my suggestion is, if you want it to be a goal, make sure it's in the curriculum. The function of curriculum is to achieve the stated goals. So if this is a stated goal, make sure it gets into the curriculum. If you don't want it in the curriculum, then take it out of the goals. But that's one of the things where I think the community has to come together with the administration, the teachers, and the parents, and say, let's get very clear on what our goals are, so we can make sure if it's a goal, it's in the curriculum. And then the sixth one is improving students' communication skills. I would ask questions of, is this something you think we need to do better on, or do you think we're doing great already? And so this was an area that most people said, I think we could do better on student communication skills. Are we doing a bad job? I don't think you're doing a bad job. I think you could do a better job. And I would tell you to think about communication skills broadly, from digital communications to written communication to oral communication. And students said that I think students felt like they wish their writing was stronger. I heard that in some of the student focus groups and open-ended comments on the surveys. One of the things that also came up that I put under this category is this idea of quirkiness. I hear the word a lot. I don't think there's sound evidence to say gifted kids are necessarily more quirky than non-gifted kids. But sometimes it's a label that gets used with gifted kids for better or worse. And I think there were cases, and I heard this described, so I'm trying to capture a phenomenon that as I heard it multiple times. And that is, sometimes the kids were not challenged to become more clear communicators because they were just quirky and that's the way they're going to communicate. And I would challenge you guys to say, we can appreciate quirkiness, but we can also coach and teach professional communication skills at the same time. So don't let quirkiness become a crutch that prevents students from achieving at the level they need to. That's what I would encourage you to think about. And I connected it with this idea of communication skills because that's how it came up in the feedback I was receiving. That are there going to be quirky kids? As long as they're kids, there's going to be quirky kids. But let's not let quirkiness become a barrier. Let's say, all right, this is where, because there was I think I'm a little bit quirky myself, but through a lot of practice, I've learned how to speak in complete sentences and smile when I talk, and occasionally mix in a joke or two so that it softens the blow. So I think you can teach kids that at all levels, from the elementary all the way through the high school. I think as we move into the next slide here, I'm going to talk about two systematic areas of improvement real quickly. There's this, I think there's an identity fragment. And this identity fragment was manifest to me, and I said it's about an even split. I felt like some people describe Aspire as mostly focused on nurturing social and emotional needs with highly gifted kids. And then there were other people that thought, we spend too much time on all that social emotional stuff. We need to be deeply focused on academic achievement. And so what I suggest is there needs to be a coming together so that we don't see these things as in competition, but rather we see maintaining social emotional development as a way to support students' academic achievement. But right now I feel like there's a division of what is the main focus of Aspire. If I were going to give you a suggestion, and I will give you a suggestion, you can take it or leave it, but I suggest that you focus on the academic achievement component and you look as nurturing and taking care of the social and emotional side as a component to help students maintain and reach for academic achievement. So, find a way to come together on this so that you more focus your mission as a program and avoid this fragmentation. I would suggest that you, in that same vein, go back and clearly define the Aspire goals. I think there's a lot of goals, in all honesty, and I would say like the leadership development one, and there probably are a couple others that are great goals. We love to write them down. We love to use them in student recruitment. We love to talk about them. But if they're not built into the curriculum, ask yourself why they're listed on the goal statement. And I would say, It's easier to have tight and focused achievement on a smaller set of goals than to have a lot of goals that you sort of sporadically hit in your curriculum development and measurement of student achievement. So just to try to maybe refocus the program goals and ask yourself, if it's important enough to be a goal, it has to also be important enough to be in the curriculum in a consistent and aligned basis. The second area of systematic improvement is related to the high school. And I want to point out that the high school had the first class was in their sophomore year when I was doing the evaluation last year. So it's clearly new, like it's the newest frontier of where Aspire is headed. So to say that there are some areas of possible improvement there is probably like speaking the obvious. But just a few things I wanted to point out. The high school kids told me that they couldn't see how Aspire was much different than the GT program at the high school. Because there's already been in a GT program. I mean, that's been state policy for years that you already have high school GT elements. So the students would say, golly, Dr. Kettler, we can't quite tell the difference like between the Aspire program and the standard GT program. And then when you got into the AP classes, they said it's even harder to tell what those differences are. And I know that you've probably already worked on that because I'm talking to you several months after I've completed this because of the pandemic. But the idea that that was what the students' perception was. I think the students wanted a more obvious and different high school experience that Aspire might present. So I suggested, are there ways you might restructure what Aspire restructure it or possibly rebrand what Aspire might be when you get it to the high school? Look for ways to partner it with, I know at Grapevine High School, you've also got what I can tell is a really solid STEM program. So there may be some possible partnerships there. That would be, just look at how you could take it to the next level. How could you include career exploration, internships, mentorships, so that high school Aspire education becomes truly a transformative experience, propelling them into their next level of life and career and education, rather than just a slight tweak on what typical high school is. So that would be my recommendation. And then we've got this nagging little thing called GPA policy. GPA policy is it's like the, I don't know, it's the poison dart of good education across almost every high school I visit. So little things like the students would say, well, if you're going to make Aspire classes harder, we need, weighted GPA. And I thought, well, you can't do that. So how do you merge, the limitations of GPA policy with the ambitions of Aspire? I don't think I have an easy answer, but I know that you've got talented people that should come together and continue to talk about that. So a couple closing thoughts. One of the things that Aspire does for me, and I told Julie this, and I hope all of you are okay with it, but and I don't always mention it by name unless I'm really pressed and I trust the people, but I brag about the Aspire program pretty frequently because my point is, if one district can do it, other districts can do it. And what I would say is, even if you don't do it with highly gifted kids, some of the structures and programs or elements of Aspire could be implemented more broadly in lots of school districts. So I use Aspire as a model. I've said it frequently that I think it's the best gifted education program in the state of Texas. And I get to run with some pretty good people. I'm the chair of the Commissioners Advisory Council for Gifted Education. So when I bring it up, I'm bringing it up to good crowds, right? So I think Aspire is remarkable in many ways. But like I said, you hired me to give you some thoughts on how to go from good to great, and I've tried to do that consistently in my written report and in my oral conversations with the leadership. I think the Aspire program meets some of the goals of the district, in particular those LEAD 2.0 goals. And I think that Aspire can continue to be an example. And I know that we're going to do this fancy little online presentation since we couldn't travel in person to speak about it, but several of us are doing a presentation on how to use program evaluation to continue to improve programs. But I think is there room to grow? Yes, there's room to grow. But is Aspire already doing some magnificent things? My experience is yes. one of the things that I didn't talk a lot about here was I felt like the students were really quite healthy. And when I say quite healthy, adolescent students, high school students are some of the most stressed people in our country. And it's a fairly new phenomenon that high school students, teenagers are more stressed than young adults. That's a new phenomenon, but it's measured by these surveys, population surveys done by the American Psychological Association, APA. So one of the things that I've been studying in my research at Baylor is gifted student stress. And so I tried to get at some of that when I talked to the Aspire students, and I actually found that it's possible that the Aspire students are less stressed than some of the students in other high schools. And one of your instincts might be to think, well, man, we put all these gifted kids in the same class, and you know they're competing against each other. But I just didn't see that level of stress among them. They're funny. They talk about how they're really stressed. But when they answered the survey items, they indicated that, no, it's not all that stressful in reality. So I want to encourage parents that when your kids, is stress real? Yes, stress is real. But there are times when kids describe how stressed they are the same way adults describe how busy they are. Like if you see someone you haven't seen in a year and they say, hey, Todd, how have you been? I'm busy. You can't imagine how busy I am. I've got this job and it requires me to do all these things. Oh, just busy. And then I got all those kids. So, we're busy. I think adults use busy as this badge of how well my life's going in a similar way that students in high school talk about how stressed they are about classes and all, getting ready for college, because it's like this badge of honor. I'm doing it right because I'm stressed, right? So, but the good news is they didn't in reality seem as stressed as they sometimes might say they are on the outside. And I say that as a parent of a high school senior. So, I mean, we know what high school stress is at our house too, trying to figure out where do we go from here. But I just feel like the kids were healthy in many regards, and that says a lot about the program and the district's support structures. So thank you, Julie. I probably went over my time by a few minutes, but if you want to ask me some questions, I will be glad to answer a few.
Thank you so much, Todd. I know we didn't give you nearly enough time really to talk at length about the many aspects of your findings. Cheryl and I do have a few slides to share with those who can stay on the call. But I did want to, I think maybe Amy Warren or maybe Kimberly, would there be a question or two that Dr. Kettler could answer before we close out his part of tonight's meeting?
We don't have any questions. I was just going to tell you, we don't have any questions that have come in through the chat. Oh, wait a minute. Here's one. They're asking, what can we do to make it even better with the feedback from this audit?
So I can tell you that's part of what Dr. Taliaferro and I are going to be talking about in a few minutes. Todd, Dr. Kettler, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Well, I'll just add briefly, and this is probably some of my bias because curriculum is my specialty. That's what I write books and give talks about. Developing a solid curriculum is the foundation of taking achievement from where it is to the next level. And I think that is going to take time. It's not something you can just say, hey, this summer we're going to whip out the curriculum. It's going to take time. You're going to have to focus on putting the right people at the table, training them on how to write high quality curriculum, compensating them for their time if they're doing it beyond their normal contract time. But you're going to have to invest in that so that you can I would suggest to you that right now you're achieving in the 90 plus percentile with a mediocre curriculum. All right. And I'm going to say, what can you do with a great curriculum? Right. So let's ask how we can take a mediocre curriculum to a great curriculum. And when I say you've got a mediocre curriculum, I'm still comparing that. I have high standards. So what your mediocre curriculum would be better than a lot of people's, but I think you can still do better. So when you say, how do we go from already being good to great? I think the secret lies in better writing a curriculum so that you can have this consistency and alignment. And then it's easier to train your teachers on how to implement it because it's very clear what the expectation is when you have a clearly written foundation.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's another one that just came in. Well, there's a couple actually, but let me focus on one at first. It says, this is asking Dr. Kettler, do you think Aspire has been a good investment and one that we should continue?
Well, that's a question that seems multifaceted. Is it a good investment? Well, one of the things I learned talking to some of the people relocated to come to Aspire. I don't know that I've ever been in a place where people like pick up and move, not because of a parent's job, but because we've got this middle school kid who needs a better school and we're going to relocate to this North Texas Metroplex area so that our kid can go to this program. That doesn't happen. That is not common. People go to college like that maybe, but you don't see that families making that kind of decision. So is it a good investment? I think you're changing lives. I think lives are being changed because of the opportunity. I think with the other thing that you're going to start seeing is the results are going to pay off in things like National Merit Finalist. You're going to see that is going, I suspect that's going to be something that you're going to see an uptick in because the type of preparation these kids are getting over time in the program. And I think you're going to see these kids garnering high quality college admissions and college scholarships. So when you say, is this an investment that's worth it? Well, I would say for the families that achieve that, college admissions, scholarships, and recognition for the district, because I think you can put yourself in a position where you're recognized for this excellence in advanced academics. And I think that's good for the community, and I think that's good for the families and the kids. So my answer is absolutely, it's a good investment. I think it is money well spent, partly because mostly importantly, because kids' lives are being transformed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. Give me just a second. It looks like Julie and Dr. Taliaferro ended up muted again. So hang on. I'm so sorry. Give me my list here. I apologize, y'all. This is not my forte. Here we go, Julie.
Thank you. To the point that Todd just made, Cheryl is so great about tracking data, student performance data, and she and I have had numerous conversations about how being able to capture the student performance data, where they apply to college, scholarships they might earn, that is a long game, and we have a plan for that long game. Our leading class, they are juniors this year, and so we are continuing to gather that data. But our dream is to ultimately be able to market the Aspire Academy to universities and to be able to tell universities what Aspire is and to be able to provide them some basic, not overwhelm them, but some basic information about how the curriculum has been different and about how we have differentiated the experience the students get in an Aspire Academy. Some of you may know that Cheryl and I did do some college visits last year, both together and separately. Sage helped us put together a beautiful brochure, colored, shiny brochure that we were able to email and that we took on these visits, and we'll be updating that. And we'll continue to keep our website updated. But that's going to take some time, but we believe that pretty soon, and Todd can speak to this from a Baylor perspective, but we believe that pretty soon universities in this area, and then perhaps to a wider and wider radius, universities are going to begin to understand what we've got here in Aspire, and they are then going to come knocking on our door. They're going to want a pipeline to our students. But for now, since it's a new program, we are endeavoring to do some of that marketing. She and I also have full-time jobs in addition to marketing Aspire, but that is something that we are consistently thinking about and working on. Todd, did you want to speak to that related to that?
I'll just give you an example, Julie. After my experience with the evaluation, I went and met with the dean of the Honors College at Baylor, and I said, you need to know about this program. I think they're pretty phenomenal, and they would like to come and visit. And so then I put Cheryl, I think it was you, right, Cheryl, that you were in contact with the Honors College, and we actually had the visit scheduled. That they were going to come to Baylor, they were going to get a campus visit, they were going to meet specifically with the Honors College to learn about how the Honors College works at Baylor. And then the pandemic hit. So that didn't happen. And I would like to say that we will resume that when it is reasonable to resume that. Right now, I don't think Baylor's having any kind of extra student groups on campus. We're having to, it's all we can do to manage COVID among the ones our typical students, right? But I think that's an example of the kind of partnerships we can build so that these kids can get experiences to learn about different universities. But I would encourage you to look at honors colleges and honors programs across all universities. I think those are tremendous opportunities where you can, I would say that the honors program at several universities in Texas, not just bragging on the one at which I work, but in several universities in Texas, have programs that are commensurate with the finest Ivy and Ivy type institutions in the nation. So they just don't forget about honors colleges. And what I think you can sometimes do is you can go to an honors college at a place like Baylor and also have an incredible academic scholarship to go for a reasonable or low price and still have that small group honors college feel at a fantastic university. I'm not saying there are multiple. Baylor's one, but there are multiple of those in the state of Texas and beyond the state of Texas.
So, building that does take time, and that is something that we are consistently working on. The last thing I would say is perhaps connected to that, what Todd just said, and Cheryl, I'd love for you to chime in. But I'm seeing a comment or a question in the chat from, I think, a parent saying that you noted that students in high school mentioned that it's difficult to see the differences between GT and AP versus Aspire. Mm-hmm. What are the benefits of continuing in Aspire after middle school? As Dr. Kettler was gathering his data, even prior to when he started gathering his data, Cheryl and I holed up a couple of different times, and we outlined what we thought were the strengths of the program. And Gypsy Mishu was a part of those initial conversations as well. I know many of you know and love Gypsy. And then also where were some strength areas? Because we wanted to know, we were kind of curious between the two of us if the things on our list were going to be similar to the things that Dr. Kettler found. And in many ways they were. One of the things that drives me that did sting related to an improvement area was this particular comment that our high school students were telling us that they wondered about. Sometimes they couldn't see the difference. Mm-hmm. And without getting into a lot of detail, Cheryl may talk about this in a few minutes in some of our slides, but truly making the Aspire class different from another AP class is akin to threading a needle. Mm-hmm. Because you've got College Board standards. We want to make sure the kids are prepared to perform on the AP exams if that is an aspiration that they have. While at the same time, we're trying to differentiate that curriculum. We are also still trying to play in the same sandbox related to campus expectations and assessments, and as Todd mentioned, related to GPA. And so working with the teachers and continuing to fine tune the curriculum is going to be a process that we have to continue working on. GCISD values student voice. Certainly we are tapping into that as well as the expertise of our teachers and sort of what they're seeing on the ground as we endeavor to fine tune every year the curriculum, the experience. The last thing I would say related to curriculum, those of us that talk about curriculum a lot, we refer to it as living. Sometimes I can get caught up in talking education speak, and sometimes parents have to remind me, like, what does that mean? By living curriculum, it means that we can write an outstanding curriculum, but if we are going to be outstanding practitioners and develop an outstanding program that continues to meet the changing needs of our students, then we have to continue going back to that curriculum time and again to make sure that in terms of text selections or whatever activities, things that engage students, improve student engagement, that those things continue to be there. And an outstanding written curriculum is something that truly does happen over time. And so we've had good questions from parents about that. I'm so grateful that to so many of you in the Aspire community, you are trusting us and you have given us time to breathe and time to get the right teachers on the bus, and certainly, Cheryl coming on board as the liaison was hugely helpful. So thank you for that trust and for giving us time to do that, and just know that we realize that as an improvement area, and yes, we are working on that. And so with that, I think we probably need to move into the next phase of our presentation tonight so that we can honor our time. And so Todd, you're welcome to stick around, but also you're welcome to sign off if you would like to. And thank you so very much. I can't wait to see you in person sometime soon.
Thank you. And I appreciate the honor of working with the district. It's you guys are doing a fantastic job in many regards, well beyond the Aspire program. Thank you.
Thanks again, Todd. So I mentioned it earlier, but wanted to do another quick shout out to the Aspire teachers. As I mentioned, they are the lifeblood of this program, not only in the work that they do day in and day out with students, but also the work that they are willing to come alongside us and do sometimes in the summer as we work to build these differentiated curriculum experiences for the students. Certainly they're working harder than ever. Because they have in-person and at-home students. And so just a huge note of gratitude, especially if you're a teacher listening and you joined late. We appreciate you. And also to Sage, like I get nothing for saying this, but if you've joined late and you aren't a member of Sage, maybe you would consider that. Sage is so supportive of what we are trying to do. It got canceled, but Cheryl and one of the high school Aspire teachers was scheduled last June to attend the Harvard College Admissions Conference, which is a significant thing that speaks to the fact that we do have our eye on the college admissions ball for Aspire students, but also just speaks to the commitment of our teachers and willing to go the extra mile and do the extra things that come with teaching highly gifted students and in the Aspire Academy. So parents have been asking me throughout this pandemic, what can we do for teachers? What can we do? How can we help? How can we support? We can't have you in our buildings nearly as much as we could prior to the pandemic. But as we enter into this season of Thanksgiving and this holiday season, you've heard me say so many times, this is especially true, if you would consider dropping a personal handwritten note to a teacher at his or her school, or they're kind of overwhelmed by emails right now. So if you send an email, please make it brief. But a handwritten note, maybe you would remember them again during this gift giving season. They are working tremendously hard. We try to thank them at every opportunity, but that is a way that you all as parents can help us support them as they are the backbone of our program. The second thing I would say to parents, just speaking honestly to you, please, if you have a question or if you have a concern about something that has happened in one of our classrooms, would you please reach out to the teacher first, or to a Canvas administrator, or to Cheryl or to me, and help each other refrain from putting that on social media. Sometimes things are, unintended, and one comment can lead to another. And I can personally tell you that I've had to talk some teachers off the ledge related to some things that they've seen on social media, and they're under enough pressure and stress right now that is a significant way that you all as parents can help support our Aspire Academy and support our teachers. And so with that, let's go to the next slide. So Cheryl and I are going to talk to you about some of the work that we have been doing since January and since getting the comprehensive audit from Dr. Kettler. Adding new Aspire teachers, I'm going to linger just a minute on this slide. We did add quite a few new teachers this summer, and the reasons we had these vacancies were all for good reasons. Some of you may remember that our biology teacher from Cross Timbers last year, I'm not sure if she actually was able to get to go. Oh, Cheryl is nodding yes. She
just arrived, yes.
Really? Okay, so pleased for Melissa, but she accepted a position working at a wildlife refuge in Costa Rica. So she let us know that early so we could post the position early and interview early, and that is a way that she took care of us. But she continued, again, talking about that written curriculum. She worked a bunch of time this summer, right, Cheryl, on helping us to prepare Michelle, who was coming in to take over for her, and again, to resign early so that we could replace her. Tim Spitzberg, they're listed at the bottom. He was at Cross Timbers and a much loved teacher there. But he expressed interest in moving to the high school to teach 11th grade Aspire, and he's in our pipeline to also teach 12th grade Aspire, the AP literature course. And so that was a positive move, though if you don't know the history, it looks like a vacancy. Emily Ramser, it took us what seems like a month to get her from Denton ISD at the beginning of this year, and thank you to the students and parents who were patient. But she took over for Dawn LeBlue, who was, again, a much loved teacher at Grapevine High School. And I was promoted to be the learning liaison at Grapevine High School. And so in the case of, well, all of the Aspire teachers, and I've heard administrators say this, they could really go and teach anywhere else. And the fact that they choose to teach in GCISD and Aspire says so much about them and about our program. And Emily is one of those. She had a job offer teaching AP at another campus, and she specifically told us that she wanted to work with Aspire. She had also been a substitute in Aspire Academy in prior years, so we were thrilled to get Em Remser on board. Chris came to us from Irving. She mentioned in her interview that she applied to nowhere else, but she was specifically drawn to Aspire Academy. Kay Walder came to us from Louisville ISD. She had been working on developing GT curriculum there. She too said that she fell in love with working with gifted students, and so she tried searching for a place where she could work with them full time, and she found Aspire. Michelle is interesting. Some of you may remember that Sterling Bristow, who's a highly regarded, much loved math teacher at Cross Timbers, that Mr. Fingers and the panel took a chance on hiring Sterling as a first-year teacher for Aspire Academy. And what a wonderful decision that has been for so many students and for the Aspire team. Michelle is another example of that. She came to us with a lot of experience from various marine, Cheryl, what's the word? Marine place in Florida, marine, not a wildlife refuge.
Conservancy.
Thank you, yes. So she brought a lot of career experience and had done some teaching in those positions, but had not been full-time. And what a wonderful addition that she has been. And so if you'll advance to the next slide, Kimberly, I took a few minutes to share those things with you because, as I keep saying, we can't have an outstanding academy without Aspire teachers who choose us. And that's one reason why I'm so thrilled that Cheryl was able to come on board as liaison to support them, and why I do try to give them as much support as I possibly can, because we need the word to get out that Aspire Academy is a great place to be within GCISD, which is also a great place to be because for these high ability kids who need outstanding, passionate teachers who are really at the top of their game from a content perspective, we need them interested in applying to and interviewing for Aspire. And so to our hiring process, it's quite extensive. This was part of what Todd mentioned about in the audit in terms of who are Aspire teachers. Several years ago, we worked with GTAC to develop an Aspire teacher profile. And that maybe hasn't been mentioned lately, but it is utilized when we look at who we're going to add to our Aspire team. We post and spread the word. We interview several times, and the panel is large. Campus staff, it's Cheryl and me. Typically, it might be, depending on the position, it will be other central office administrators and then other teachers, members of the Aspire teams, all sit on that panel to try to get to know the person that we're potentially adding to our Aspire team. We certainly look at GT teaching experience and the 30 hours, but we also look at what do references say? What are some things that the applicants are saying in their interviews regarding their ability to build relationships? How relational are they? Their ability to build a really positive classroom culture where kids feel safe, really grappling with some higher level concepts and taking the risks that we want them to take. Then sort of another step, we may have several interviews with the teachers, and then a second or a third. I could call it an interview, but it's not really an interview. It's a time where we then get with the applicant, and Cheryl and I show them curriculum documents, and I encourage them, ask anybody you know about Aspire, learn the good, the bad, and the ugly. We want this to be a really good fit for us and for you. So that is an additional aspect. And then we also look at training. Cheryl sits with new people. They sit with teams they will be joining. And certainly if they teach AP, they've attended College Board training and other things that we might offer in GCISD. So we really work hard to get the right people there with your kids to continue building this incredible program. With that, I think, Cheryl, you take it away.
Sure. So one of the things that we really loved about this evaluation that Todd did is that it is very rich with information about ways that we can improve. I think that we have enough data and suggestions for him to build for several more years. So we're very excited about that. When we first got his written evaluation, Julie and I sat in her office for several hours and really dug into a lot of the recommendations and tried to prioritize things. So some of the things that he suggested are definitely things that are going to take several years to build out. But we also wanted to be able to start immediately and make sure that everyone could see some short-term results coming out of this. It's very important to us that this evaluation not be something that just metaphorically sits on a shelf somewhere. We really do want to use this information and do the best that we can for all of your students. So we kind of prioritized and divided up some of the recommendations and started with some of the suggestions that we felt like we could implement ourselves immediately. One of the big goals that we have is strengthening our high school program. And we recognized that Cross Timbers Middle School had a really fabulous, and still does, have a really fabulous structure in place for our program. And they had benefited from lots of experiences that they had learned over the years that it was being built. Because Grapevine High School was a place where we were still new, we needed to get some of those structures in place and strengthen them up. So Julie and I met with campus administration. We talked to them about these results. And one of the things that we immediately asked is that Aspire could be prioritized a bit more among our teachers. One of the things that's really unique about our Aspire high school teachers is that they all also teach outside of Aspire. So the way their schedules work out, I think last year, most of them had a couple of sections of an Aspire class and a couple of sections of like 2 other classes. So all of that comes with increased meetings and responsibilities, and we just needed it to be really clear that Aspire would be a priority. So everyone was really on board with that. We've been very thankful for the structures they've helped us with. And I think that it's been really good for the teachers as well as the program. So last year we met bi-weekly as a team at the high school, and then I met bi-weekly with all of our teachers one-on-one. We've increased that this year so that the standard is weekly, that I'm meeting with our 3 teachers who are teaching new content. And then once a week for at least an hour, we sit together as a team and talk about what's happening in Aspire and what's working well for our kids, where our kids could use some more support. So that's been very positive. We also knew at the middle school level that there were some revisions that needed to take place in humanities. So again, campus administration was very supportive of that. And we divided our teaching up so that our ELA course and our social studies course are now taught separately and treated as distinct disciplines. The reason we felt like this was so important was because we really did want to focus more on some of those ELA skills that we sort of lost time for when the classes were combined. So that was a change that we implemented immediately. We also, prior to COVID, were able to get all of the teachers together from Aspire. I think it was on a day in February when we had a professional development session. And we pulled everyone together at Cross Timbers and talked to them about this evaluation and actually had them go through a lot of the things that Todd recommended and indicate which of these recommendations they felt like needed to be implemented immediately and that they could focus on immediately, so that they had some voice in driving what our immediate work was going to be like. We also talked a lot about the curriculum. That's another major piece that we need to work on. And especially within the curriculum, there's sort of this subcategory that Todd highlights about the need for more professional, sophisticated products. And so that's definitely been one of our focuses. Those of you who have students in 9th and 10th grade English this year have seen that they are working on getting their writing published already. So that's going to continue to be a focus in our program. I think we can go to the next slide. Thanks. Once COVID happened, I think everyone knows our teachers began working night and day, some really insane hours. I think at one point we surveyed And a lot of our teachers were putting in about 80 hours a week, just trying to get things online and providing support for students as they transition to learning remotely. And a lot of this, it wasn't put on hold. We didn't want it to be, but there were some other priorities throughout the spring that needed to take place. At the end of the school year, we knew the teachers were exhausted. We knew that they had worked very, very hard, but we also knew that we wanted to keep moving forward with our improvements. Teachers are off contract in the summer, understandably. So Julie and I asked them, you know, who has the energy and the time and really wants to dig in and keep working through the summer. And one of the things that still kind of makes me tear up about it all is 100% of our Aspire teachers agreed to work through the summer. There was no pressure on that, and Julie did have funding for them, so they did get paid. But they have been really, really incredible through all of this. So all of them worked on training for our new online platforms and getting lessons created and loaded that were very specific to Aspire students to make sure that whatever the case was going to be when we opened up in August, that the kids would have things ready to go. Beyond that work that they did training in Seesaw and developing lessons in Seesaw as well as in Canvas, some of our teachers did want to continue with writing curriculum. One of the things that was very fortunate for us was Dr. Lee Ballard graduated in the spring with her doctorate. So she reached out and said that since she no longer was going to be in class over the summer, she could tackle another project. So she began looking more deeply at fourth grade humanities. And in fourth grade, the kids take Texas history, which they also take in seventh grade. So that was a really important touch point for us. Lee was able to look at the seventh grade curriculum and figure out what she could pull down in order to deepen and enrich in the fourth grade curriculum for the kids. And she's still working on that, but she just did a really fabulous job with it. We also were in a situation at Glen Hope where Will Boykin accepted a job as a GT specialist, and all of a sudden getting some of his curriculum documented became a really high priority for all of us. Mr. Boykin very graciously sat down with some documents and plugged in a lot of the work that he had done and left a lot of resources and activities for our new teacher, Ms. Walder. He and Kay Walder also met with me during the summer to go through all of it and for him to explain what he found that had worked really well with our Aspire kids in fifth grade math. So that's been a pretty smooth transition. Also, if you know Mr. Boykin, he's still talking with Ms. Walder and still there supporting our kids in lots of ways. So we definitely appreciate him. Then on the next slide, middle school curriculum was another thing that we tackled. Melissa, as Julie mentioned earlier, had taken a job in Costa Rica, and she did such a fabulous job with our biology curriculum and felt so personally invested in it that she wanted to make sure that all of it got documented for her replacement. She also had co-taught seventh grade science with Jennifer Edwards, and the two of them had a lot of ideas about ways to really sort of reorganize sixth and seventh grade and restructure it a little bit. These weren't major revisions, but they were like reorganizations of units and ways to layer in some more depth that they both thought would be good for the kids. So Jennifer and Melissa and I met, I think, every day throughout the month of June for several hours, just getting everything in writing and documenting how we were meeting gifted standards as well as state standards. There are some pieces of the AP College Board curriculum that was pulled down into those science classes to extend the curriculum for the students. Depth and complexity was layered on, and parallel curriculum model framework was used for all of that. So they were really fabulous. And around that same time, Michelle had been hired. So just like Will Boykin had done with Kay, Michelle met with Melissa, two M's. And they walked through the biology curriculum, and she was able to get a lot of support and mentoring that way from Melissa before Melissa left. We also had made some structural changes to the humanities program. Our curriculum for history stayed pretty much the same, but 8th grade US history was not well documented. So Mr. Tucker took a lot of time this summer and got those documents in order. And I started working on a regular basis with our new ELA teacher and looking at how we could restructure ELA and really strengthen up some of that grammar and the writing work, which if you have a child in 7th or 8th grade, ELA, I think you've seen a lot of the benefits of that already. And over in the math department, one of the things that Sterling and Aaron Baruder had been asking for help with for a while is just finding some more challenging real world application problems that they could use with their students. So Duke Chip got canceled over the summer because of COVID. And while that was an unfortunate experience, a side benefit of it is that there were a lot of really talented people who had planned on working for Tip over the summer who suddenly had a lot of free time. So we enlisted the aid of a man, Rick Moser, who was actually a full-time engineer, career military, nuclear engineer. And when he retired from the military, he did a stint with TI for a while and then decided to spend his retirement teaching. And he began writing curriculum for TIP, and he teaches at a private school in the area. And so he had some free time and came in and worked with Aaron and Sterling, and they walked him through their curriculum and in an ideal world what they would look for or want. And he created several problem sets for them to layer into the curriculum that could give our kids more of a challenge and see how math is applied in real world settings more significantly. So our middle school teachers did a lot of work this summer. And then the next slide is about our high school. We knew that we were starting our 11th grade courses, and that had been on our radar for a while. So regardless of the evaluation happening, we already had a lot of time planned in order to help develop those courses. We'd also just finished the first year of our 10th grade courses, and the two teachers who taught that, again, really wanted to document and lay out some revisions while they were fresh on their minds about things that they thought would help improve the courses for the second year that they were offered. Amanda Guthrie has been absolutely a jewel for us. She and Tim Spitzberg both met with me once a week all summer long and just worked on these curriculum documents and trying to make sure that the kids who were going into 11th grade were going to have a fabulous experience, and it's going really well. We're very, very proud of it. When Todd was talking earlier about some of the college experiences and the work that Julie and I had done prior to COVID happening and trying to get the word out and get college experiences and visits set up for the kids. That is one of the ways that we have intentionally differentiated our Aspire English courses at the high school level. We know that our kids have some slightly different needs and things that they need to look at as they are planning for college admissions and even just learning more about what college really is and what it can be. So we do have a specialized personalized learning plan for our Aspire kids that focuses them on college readiness and different college options. We've done quite a bit of work helping them learn about some of the distinctions between honors colleges, liberal arts colleges, research institutes, highly selective schools, and then this year we're layering in also specialized schools like women's colleges, as well as the military academies and some HBCUs that would be good fits for our students. Mrs. Ramser, if you have students in her class, rolled out those PLPs this year during that C-Day when the kids were PSATing, and has been meeting one-on-one with all of our 9th and 10th grade students, talking to them about what they're putting in their PLPs and giving them some insights and some suggestions. Also out of AP English with Mr. Spitzberg, we have a lot of PSAT prep work that's built into that course. He worked really closely with Mrs. Trang and over at CHHS at Weebido to get their insights into what's been really successful for them throughout the past years as they've done PSAT prep. And then in 9th and 10th grade, we're layering more of that into the English classes as well, so that the kids just are as prepared as possible for these next steps that they'll be taking. And ongoing and future work, we have already started planning our 12th grade courses. That is very much at the forefront of our minds and what we are going to be doing with our seniors, especially as they take those first steps towards actually filling out those college applications and going through interview processes, applying for scholarships. We know that mission work is also a really important thing that we need to tackle. Ideally, that possibly would have begun towards the end of last school year, but again, COVID kind of put a pause on that, but we haven't forgotten about it. So sometime in the upcoming school year, we will be convening some mission work with parents and teachers and all of the stakeholders to really kind of dig more into some of the things that Todd has asked that or suggested that we really narrow in and focus on. The curriculum work that we're doing will be ongoing. I don't think it's probably ever going to stop, but it's really good work. And the other thing that's really been on our minds a lot is strengthening services for 2E students. And we are extremely thankful to SAGE for all the work that they have done in developing the committees specifically for 2E work and reaching out to families. We know that as a field, not just in GCISD by any means, but across the nation and really across the world, this is an area that people are starting to develop more. It has not been a really solidly built field. So again, we're kind of on the forefront of that, but it's something that's very dear to our hearts. We have been working closely with several families who have students who need a few more supports. Our teachers, I would say pretty much in every meeting that we have that's a team meeting, there are specific students who we talk about and touch base about to make sure that they do get the support that they need in the classrooms and that they are developing appropriately and feeling good about the work that they are doing. And in terms of college planning, one of the things we've also started working on is trying to identify what colleges are going to offer the most support or the most appropriate services for students who may not be ready to let go of all of their accommodations when they leave high school. And 504 services in college are different than they are in secondary and elementary schools. So it's important that our families have that information. The same accommodations don't apply in all settings. So we need to make sure that our kids are prepared for the settings that they're entering. We also know that different colleges approach those accommodations in different ways. We also have some students who probably would benefit for some more support services on the residential side of college. And there are places that do a really good job with that. So we're working on getting lists together and identifying colleges that will be good fits for some of our kids who would benefit from some more of these support services throughout their university lifetimes. So there's a ton of work left to do, but it's all really good work that we are very excited about and very thankful to be partnering with all of you in.
Yes, thank you so much, Cheryl. So in thanking and acknowledging everybody this evening, I've, perhaps saved one of the best for last, and that would be you. You are such a jewel, such a valuable asset to the Aspire program. I know how our parents so appreciate you, as do our teachers, and as do I. To the parents and everybody on this call, I every now and then I'll tell Cheryl how much it fills up my cup, my brain and my heart to sit and visit with Cheryl and talk about things. So Cheryl, thank you so very much. She choked up about how hard the teachers worked this summer and that we had 100%. And yes, I choke up sometimes talking about them too. And I also do about the team, about Cindy Garcia, Gypsy Mishu, and Cheryl Taliaferro. Such smart, committed women. And it's definitely my pleasure to work with them. We have talked about a lot of exciting things this evening. Certainly we've shared with you a lot of things that are worthy of celebrating. Please hear us. I think we've shared with you the work that we did. The work was, different maybe than we thought it was going to be because of the pandemic, but the work didn't stop. And we will continue this important work and benefiting from Dr. Kettler's audit, as Cheryl mentioned. And so also a huge shout out to SAGE and to GTAC for the incredible foundation work that you laid years ago in creating Aspire Academy. That was just really an incredible vision, and so many students and families are getting to benefit from that. So thank you. And a final note, I noticed in the comment that Mr. Rodriguez mentioned about, and Todd mentioned too, about this is one of the strongest, if not the strongest gifted program in the state. And that is huge. And so that is a reason to celebrate, but also please don't think that we're resting on our laurels either. because we know that we can take this to the next level. And with your help, we intend to do that.
Thank you so much, Julie. We really appreciate it. And thank you for your leadership and your whole team. We are so very, very blessed. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We went a few minutes over, but I appreciate everybody sticking with us. And I just want to take an opportunity one more time. I know a lot of us are, and probably many people on this call are worried about funding in the future because of the pandemic and just everything going on in public education. So, you know, I know that we have lots of concerns amongst us of, you know, what is the future going to look like? And so I would just ask you to remember to vote, and also ask you to please, please, please remember to reach out every opportunity that you have and thank our district administration. And not just thank them, but let them know also how very much we appreciate this program for our kids, and just reminding them of that. So they're not just hearing from us maybe when, you know, when the budgets are being put in. So it's a great opportunity now as we're heading into the season of Thanksgiving to reach out to all of our administration and our board of trustees and just letting them know how important this program is to us. So we really appreciate everybody being here. And I hope everybody has a great night. Stay warm out there. It's crazy cold. So